The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, ready to talk some more Doctor Who, this time from the modern era. And joining me once again, returning to Next Stop Everywhere, is the wonderful and fantastic Lee Leonard. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere.
Oh, stop.
So glad to have you back. You did such a good job when we talked about Inferno that I was really looking forward to it, and you were kind enough to offer to come back, and I really appreciated that. So, and here we are now talking something from the modern era. So,
well, thank you, Charles. My pleasure.
Yep, and this was one of the episodes that you recommended, and I thought this was going to be a great one, because today here at episode 141 we're going to talk The Girl Who Waited. And I just did my rewatch. Apparently Lee rewatched this like 3 times. So he's more prepared than I am, you guys, and hopefully, so at least I'll rely on him to carry the show this time.
Yeah. I can't get enough of this episode. It's probably in my top 5.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was noting that, and we'll talk about that more. But just how well written it is, and how structured it is. And if you're a time travel geek, this has to be right up. This is prime stuff for you. This is almost like time travel porn because of the issues involved and the way it's resolved, and a lot of good ethical, moral dilemmas in this one. And the Doctor and primarily Rory is faced with this horrible choice of having to choose between his young wife, or Amy, and the older Amy, about whether one or both should be able to survive. Because of the way the timelines have kind of mucked with everything. And a lot of good dilemmas here, so I'm looking forward to talking that with you, Lee.
It's such a gut punch.
It is.
I mean, it's one of the more thought-provoking episodes that I've seen in Doctor Who. I couldn't even imagine that situation. I mean, I think about, someone that I love, my girlfriend, and having to make that decision. And you can understand why Rory is just so racked at the end of this.
Yeah, you almost can't even imagine how you would handle that. Did you give any thought to how you would handle that kind of moral dilemma?
Oh God, I think.
I know it is a tough one. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. So
I go back and forth with it. Really, it's one of those ones where it's like, Amy has lived this life and she has every right to continue living it, and
And you feel so bad for old Amy that she got so screwed out of the deal.
Yeah,
like she's stuck there for 36 years, and and we'll obviously get into that in our discussion. So I don't want to jump ahead because I'm sorry. I know obviously I'm excited to talk about this.
Me too. And I just want to say that you mentioned that it was beautifully written by Tom McRae, who also wrote Age of Steel and Rise of Cybermen.
Yep.
Which was your reverse the polarity the last time we talked.
Right.
But it was even more beautifully directed. I think that this.
Yeah, Nick Huron directed this one.
I mean, this guy can direct every Doctor Who episode, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he does a masterful job here, and what I really liked about his direction here is that he brings a clarity to this. I mean, the way with these having 2 Amys and all these different timelines, and one's older, one's not, and in the way the the dialogue flows, with obviously different pronouns and whatnot, and tenses, that it can get a little confusing to the viewer. And I kind of think it's a credit to Nick Huron that he's able to make what is a very convoluted story come off so easy and and so smoothly, I think.
Yeah, I mean, until you really start to think about it, but we won't.
Yeah. As long as
just
once you start replaying it in your head, you're like, wait a minute, okay, but
yeah, well, it's Doctor Who. You just have to let it wash over you.
Just roll with it.
Yeah, but to me, the stark white set and the swipe transitions and the great cuts and the symmetry really, it was a lot like the God Complex in that way. Even though that looks completely different, there's still that symmetry in a lot of the scenes, and it kind of made me think of Kubrick.
That's a great analogy, because if you've ever seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, especially where there's scenes like with the old Dave Bowman in bed in that stark white room.
Yep. And I know we're not talking about the God Complex, but
right.
That's very Shining.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's in a hotel and it's much more claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. But this one, it just seems so like futuristic and clean and, and sterile almost.
Yeah.
As a contrast. So what have you been up to since last time we talked? It's been a little while. A few months, any new updates on the Lee Leonard front?
No, just still playing with the band and just hanging out.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
band's doing good.
I'm sorry?
The band's doing good.
The band's doing good. We were in the search for a new guitar player. So if you know anybody.
Well, there you go. We get a little forum, so hey, maybe somebody knows somebody. So, but you can kind of give them your contact information here at the end of the show, so how to reach you. Yep.
Yeah.
Is this a bass guitar player or a lead guitar player?
Rhythm and lead.
Rhythm and lead.
So, okay. Yeah, there were two rhythm and lead players. Okay. Me being one of them, and the other one left. So. Yeah.
All right. Well, sometimes these bands have these creative changes. So.
Yep.
These things happen. All right. You already talked about that. It was written by Tom McRae, directed by Nick Huron. This is the 10th episode of Series 6 that aired way back in 2011. So already this episode's getting some mileage. 8 years already. So of course, starring Matt Smith as 11th Doctor, Karen Gillan as Amy Pond, Arthur Darvill's Rory Williams, and all of them do a great job, although this is kind of a Doctor Light episode.
Yep, I had that in my notes.
Yeah, that mostly obviously Karen Gillan has the brunt here at playing two different versions of Amy, and it's a phenomenal job in my opinion, especially as when you're trying to play your older self, and being as young as she is, at least at this time, to kind of try to approach that with a different perspective. She does a great job here. Little trivia bit. This episode title, obviously, if you've been watching the Matt Smith era, you know that this title was a reference to Amy having waited 12 years and later 2 more years for the Doctor to return in the 11th hour, Matt Smith's first episode. And they bring this title back, so it's a very apropos title in my opinion.
Right, and wasn't Rory the boy who waited at one point?
Yes, he was, because when he was waiting 2,000 years for the Pandorica to open. So yeah, Amy can cry about 36 years all she wants, but Rory should go, "Hey, I waited 2,000 years for you."
Yeah.
So by my clock, I think I'm still up on you on that one.
Sure, although I think they rebooted that universe.
This is true. Yeah. Yeah, because the Moffat hand wave, it's gone. All right. So, interesting. We don't have a lot of cast in this one, but we do have a kind of a notable cast member in the form of Imelda Staunton, who plays the voice of Interface in this one. And if the name sounds familiar, especially if you're a Harry Potter geek, you know that she played Dolores Umbridge in 2 Harry Potter films. Primarily in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, but then she also returns briefly in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So you can, so that was kind of a cool get for the show. Another strong Harry Potter connection for Doctor Who. She was also in the movies Alice in Wonderland, the 2010 Tim Burton version. And she's also going to be in the upcoming Downton Abbey movie, if you're a Downton Abbey geek.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep. So if you're a Imelda Staunton fan, thought she was a great villain in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah,
Just one you love to hate. And here she's just so pleasant as this computer voice that tries to keep Amy Pond from basically older Amy Pond from going off the rails, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to her and having obviously seen the Harry Potter movies, you can hear the menace in her voice, even though it's not overt. You can just knowing how she is in that movie.
Did you kind of picture Interface more menacing, knowing that
it was her,
knowing that it was her?
Yeah.
So you could. I mean, it's not like Interface was being menacing. Really,
Nope.
It was just, but because of that familiarity with Imelda Staunton as Dolores Umbridge, you're gonna get that vibe. Like, okay, you're like, I'm kind of like, well, what if Interface was evil? And you get this kind of a more darker spin on the episode a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. So let's get into our main topics. And topic number 1, of course, got to talk about the two Amys.
Yeah, I thought Karen Gillan was superb.
She is superb.
She was never one of my favorite companions, but this one, I think she stands out far and away more than maybe any other episode she's been in.
This is definitely a true spotlight for her.
Yeah, totally. Let me ask you what you thought of the prosthetics.
I think it's a Doctor Who TV budget, even in the modern era. I thought they could have done a little better job, but they weren't horrible.
No, considering the budget. And,
yeah.
I mean, like what stood out to me was like they really nailed the lower half of her face.
Yeah.
But the upper half and her hair was still perfectly red.
Yeah,
gray.
That's what I think it would have been nice if they at least put like a little gray swish in there somewhere to kind of make her look more distinctive.
Right.
And you notice, like I noticed that with Amy's arms and legs, they didn't look aged at all.
No, and I was looking at her hands too.
Because she had, especially at this point, she's got such a thin frame.
Right.
And so she's kind of like, she's doing the running and she's trying to work that katana and doesn't quite work it very well for someone who's practiced for 36 years.
Have that later in my notes.
Yeah, because I'm a bit of a martial arts geek, and like she should probably be a little better with that katana than.
Think about how much better she got in Guardians of the Galaxy.
This is true, exactly. So obviously, between this episode and when she became Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm sure she had a lot of better action training, fighting training.
Definitely.
But here, she does her best. And yeah, it just seemed like with her arms and her legs that well, shouldn't they kind of be a little fatter or something? As you age, their little things start to sag a little bit.
Maybe, but she's also, if you think about it, she didn't even have to eat.
So you kind of pictured that she was more like a little thinner because of not eating.
Well, maybe, but you don't really know why. I mean, that they don't really explain it, but she, in the beginning when she's in there, and she says she's been in there for a week.
Right.
Doctor asks if she's eaten. She's like, I didn't need to. I wasn't hungry. So you don't really know what her metabolism's like in there, and if she even has to eat at all. Who knows?
And it's only like a 45-minute episode, so they can't cover too much ground.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and like we said, they did the best with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good enough. It's not something that you focus on. You actually get more involved in the story. It doesn't distract you from the story, is my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So what did you think of the older Amy? And the fact that she's 36 years older, she's been trapped there, feeling abandoned by the Doctor, and hating him, and all of a sudden now she's Rory and the Doctor try to rescue her. They go into this timeline, and now she has to kind of confront those after all these years of not having any interaction with anybody. What did you think of her in that older Amy in that situation?
I think anybody in that situation would probably lose it to some extent, but
right.
I think she She did okay. You know, I mean, the worst she did was she created her own Wilson. You know?
Yes, yeah, exactly. In the
Like
in the form of Rory the robot.
Right, right.
Her pet.
I love the fact that, you know, she spent all that time in there and she's done her best to harden herself against, you know, her feelings towards the Doctor and towards Rory. And then when she brings Rory in and introduces her to her pet Rory, there's that little scene where she reaches over and she grabs her lipstick and starts putting it on. Well, she almost puts it on and then thinks better of it. You know, it was just such a nice little touch.
Yeah.
That she's really trying hard not to just instantly fall back in love with Rory.
But she can't help herself.
No, she can't. And she drops that facade pretty quickly, it seems.
Well, and it's kind of a credit to Karen Gillan, again, because when we first introduced to old Amy, she's almost a little, like, just so detached from humanity. She is, you know, reluctant. She's very distrusting. And, you know, just because she's been in the survival mode for almost 4 decades. And as a result, it's kind of removed her from her humanity. Right. But she kind of over the course of the episode loosens up.
Yeah, and Rory points out it's like it's not even you.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and they have this great moment where Rory and the older Amy kind of have a laugh over the Doctor's fez, and she makes this one very poignant comment. She's like, you know, this is the first time I think I've laughed in 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, so it just kind of shows how alone she was, and as a result, the isolation has obviously gotten to her. I think.
One of my favorite scenes in this is when the two Amys are together talking through the time glass.
Yes.
You have one, you know, younger Amy to the left and older Amy to the right.
That kind of overlay of the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, just watching older Amy kind of realizing, you know, from a, I guess you would say, from a third, just watching it and knowing that they're actors.
Yes.
Watching older Amy kind of sit there and just make facial expressions while a younger Amy talks is, again, fantastic job by Karen Gillan. And that speech that she gives about why Rory, to convince her to help her, is just, I don't know, it was just touching for me. And I guess I'm a romantic at heart, but I love that scene.
Well, this episode is perfect for romantics.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, you feel for Amy, and you kind of like, well, there's got to be a way to fix this somehow, but not without screwing over old Amy as a result.
Yeah. And
you feel bad for her.
Totally.
She gets the raw end of the deal again.
Yeah, she sure does.
And
but at least she doesn't have to remember it.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. She's essentially wiped from existence from the timeline. But
unfortunately, Rory has to remember it. And that's
kind of. And it's kind of disappointing that wasn't kind of picked up in like maybe the next couple of episodes.
No,
because you would think that would kind of like linger.
Yeah.
There'd be a little fallout from that one.
Right, but they left. You know, they kind of was it after the God Complex that they left the TARDIS. You know, they kept coming back. But,
yeah. They had their kind of little break. Yeah. As the Doctor went off to deal with the whole River Song, you know, the wedding of River Song and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the only other thing I have in there in my notes for the two Amy section is just I like that patchwork armor she made.
Yeah.
She had that Darth Vader voice.
a little guttural because obviously she's playing an older Amy, so Karen Gillan adopted kind of a lower register.
She did, but I'm actually referring to when she has that shield.
Oh yeah, the helmet. Yeah.
Yeah, and when she first speaks, she's just like, "I've been waiting."
she should just go like, "Rory, I am your wife."
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's impossible.
Well, I mean, it was great. And one of my few little niggles in this episode is the fight scene at the end.
Yeah.
Just watching her swing the staff and the samurai sword.
The katana, yeah.
It was really bad.
It's kind of clumsy. It's like it's not very graceful at all. It's obviously someone who's not familiar with it. She tries her best, but yeah, you think she could have had a little more fight training to come off a little more smoothly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously they didn't have the budget for that. But Rory debilitating a handbot with Mona Lisa was just so. It reminded me of like classic Doctor Who, like where you had when you had people fighting the Daleks and they would just kind of push them around or knock them over. Right. It was just really silly.
Yeah, it wasn't. They were obviously outmatched as physically, so it's kind of a hand wave that to see them kind of defeat these robots who are obviously physically superior to them, or at least more of a physical threat.
Sure, I mean at least they were slow.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair though, these are medical robots. They're not exactly warrior robots.
Right, they're not trying to fight them, but just
fending them off. Yeah.
Hitting a piece of paper over one of their heads and having it just fall over. It's just
it's kind of like it's a little campy and wacky.
Yeah. Well, that's Doctor Who for you.
Exactly. All right. Anything else about the two Amy's you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think I went through everything I had.
Okay. Just a fantastic job by Karen Gillan, and it just your heart just goes out for the older Amy, but. All right, so let's move on. Topic number 2. Excuse me. The 11th Doctor and Rory. Now, Rory, especially in this episode, has some hard choices. And to the point where he even makes a comparison, like, you're turning me into you, to the Doctor. Mm-hmm. So what did you think about Rory in this episode? And also the Doctor, who obviously isn't as much of a impact here, being a Doctor Light episode, but... he obviously has some moments with Amy that are a little uncomfortable and awkward.
Yeah. This is actually, as great as Karen Gillan was in her acting, Rory, I think, is what keeps drawing me back to this episode. He is
Arthur Darvill,
Yeah, Arthur Darvill does such a great job, and when he's yelling and screaming at the Doctor, and then the scene where he's crying at the end, it's just so beautiful and so well acted.
It shows how far Rory has come since before, since the 11th hour, when he was just kind of like this non-entity.
Yeah.
And now, now he's standing up to the Doctor and going, look, Amy's in this situation because of you. Yeah. And he gets into an argument with the Doctor. He's like, hey, why don't you try reading some history books now and then and seeing what's going on? And the Doctor's all like, well, that's not how I travel.
Well, then I don't want to travel with you.
Yep, that was a good moment there.
Yeah, that was great.
And it's good to see Rory standing up for himself.
Yeah,
and for Amy.
It was a turning point, in my opinion, for Rory because it took him a while. He was always calling the Doctor out in the earlier episodes, but he eventually came around to trust the Doctor. But I think that this is the episode where I think it really starts to erode.
Yeah, I think in Series 5 he was just more about jealousy because Amy kept coming onto the Doctor in front of him, and now here in Series 6, they feel much more. He feels more secure, and it's just more like. Now I feel like I've been around, I've seen some things, I've done some things, and he has more confidence.
Sure.
And feels like he can stand up for himself.
One of the things I noticed was Rory seemed really grumpy at the beginning of this episode. Did you notice that?
Yeah, he was a little bit.
He was really short with Amy. She pushes he's just push the button, Amy.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's 2 buttons. Come on, man. Be nice. It's your wife. But,
he's like, look, you're both on this new alien planet. It's not like he should be. It's not like he's been here before, so you can't really get mad at Amy for not knowing which button to push.
Sure.
And it's not like they said, well, hey, we pushed the green button, so push the green button.
Mm-hmm. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, it is a little unfair. I'll definitely grant you that.
One of the things I thought about when I was mentioning that the Doctor, Rory had started to lose trust in the Doctor in this episode when he realized, this, I don't want to be you. If this is how you're traveling,
right.
I'm out, I think that the effects of what happened in this episode and really strengthened the bond between Amy and Rory. And I think that this is the point where they realize that they need to be companions of each other rather than companions of the Doctor.
So do you think this is kind of what caused them to want to take a break from the Doctor?
I do. I really do. I think this was so traumatic for. I don't know about Amy, but for Rory, this was extremely traumatic. I know it would.
Maybe it's more like, this kind of cemented it in Rory's mind that, hey, we need a break from this. This isn't healthy.
Yeah, we need to take care of each other.
Yeah.
Uh,
And obviously that's what happened. Now, ultimately, they end up like almost getting divorced over this. But
right.
But from taking a break from all that. But that's a little farther down the road, I think.
Yeah. What did you think of? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What
did you think about the scene with Amy and Rory against the door of the TARDIS at the end there?
It's very heartbreaking because
it was heartbreaking and shot beautifully.
Rory has this horrible choice to let Amy back in the TARDIS, even though the two Amys being in the TARDIS will horribly affect things because it's a paradox.
Because of the Blinovich limitation.
Yeah, exactly. That's an old school fan that you notice they don't pay much attention to in the modern era. But if you're a classic fan like we are, you go like, hey, what about that Blinovich limitation effect? They shouldn't even be touching each other. What's up with that?
No.
Yeah. Shouldn't there be like an explosion that knocks one out or something? But no. But so Rory's faced with this choice, and Amy's telling him, look, if you love me, don't open that door because I want to live and I want to come, I'll come in.
Kicking and screaming and crying.
Exactly. And, so if you love me, just, don't do what you want to do. I know you wear your heart on a sleeve. You care about people and you're going to do the right thing, but it's going to be the wrong thing. And you're doing this just for me. So even though I want to do this, do what's right and keep me out. And, and Rory, it just goes against all his natural instincts because, he's a nurse. He's someone to try to save people. That's his mindset.
Right.
And so he sees Amy, though, the woman he loves. And even though she's there in the TARDIS with him, younger, there's another Amy that's the exact same woman just down the road, and he has to choose not to let her in.
Right.
And the Doctor just kind of stands by and just like, okay, well, I'm out. You do your thing. It's your marriage. He makes that comment that it's your marriage.
The Doctor was cold in this episode.
He was. He was a little stone cold blooded here.
Oh man, he was mean to older Amy.
Yeah.
What did he say? Like, what did the nasty Amy do to you? When he's talking about the time, like, come on, man, you put her in this situation.
But I think it's his Time Lord instincts because he knows that older Amy is essentially wrong. It's like she doesn't belong. She shouldn't be existing, and she's only existing because of a paradox.
Well.
And so it goes against his nature, I think.
I want to get really timey-wimey on this.
I know. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. You're in the right show for it.
I think the opposite of what you think, and I think that the younger Amy. Oh boy! Once they rescue the younger Amy,
yes,
she's the one that's wrong, in my opinion, because the older Amy is the first Amy. That's the result of the progression of time, and so to just her out of existence.
So you're saying that's the natural timeline?
That's what I think. And again, I go back and forth with this one.
Yeah.
It's hard. I think she should have had a chance to live out her life, and at the very least.
Yeah.
And now maybe this is just the TARDIS.
Right.
The TARDIS would have prevented this, but why not open the door and let Amy in? And then
see what happens.
Because once they took off, she would have disappeared anyway.
Right.
But at least he would have given her a chance, instead of just leaving her behind.
Yeah, it was a little cold. I get where you're coming from. Now, my question to that is, okay, because taking younger Amy away and not going down that other timeline, it negates it. So it doesn't really matter what happens.
Right.
Essentially. Because older Amy just gets erased from existence.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what the solution they take. But you've posed an interesting.
But it still happened, I mean.
Exactly, and I get where you're coming from because that's what you're viewing as the original timeline.
Right. And
so younger Amy not going through all that is a divergence.
Correct. Second timeline.
Right.
And I don't know.
So, but it's Doctor Who, and remember, Amy of all people should know this. Time can be rewritten.
Right.
And that's what happens.
Unless it's in the Guardians of the Galaxy, not Guardians. That's in the Avengers universe, and that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a whole different explanation. It's like, we should, Nebula should just go up and go like, look, okay, my experience is that, hey, we can go back and just erase everything, but
sure, yeah.
And so all those 5 years didn't happen, but nobody asks her.
Did you see the most recent, the Endgame?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so without spoiling anything, Karen Gillan does another weird timey-wimey thing that shouldn't make any sense.
There's two Nebulas in that. That's a good point.
Right.
Just like there's two Amy's here, there's two Nebulas in Avengers Endgame.
And what happens there breaks all the Doctor Who rules.
Yeah, the time travel in that one kind of gives me a headache.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm kind of like, I'm approaching it as the Doctor Who fan. So like time travel is my jam, and so I'm like, no, wait a minute. Okay, this whole business with Cap, that's you establish these rules that you can't alter the timeline, but yet you have old Cap because he went back, and I'm like,
careful, Charles, we're going to spoil it.
That's all right. I spoiled it completely on my blog. So hashtag do spoil the end game.
All right.
So, but yeah, so I'm sure there are a lot of other Doctor Who fans that watched Avengers Endgame and probably like kind of twitching in their seats a little bit.
Yeah, kind of at one point almost
wincing at the time travel in that movie.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about the Doctor or Rory you want to talk about?
No, other than, we could talk about the Doctor making the choice that he made and whether that was his choice to make.
Right.
That's one I struggle with too, because in reality, he pretty much took away anyone's agency in this. I mean, he says he leaves it up to Rory, but Rory knows what's going to happen. Amy, he's not going to let Amy onto the TARDIS.
Right.
There's just no way. At least that's how I understood.
So what do you think if Rory actually let older Amy into the TARDIS? What do you think the Doctor would have done? I know this is hypothetical.
Yeah, it's totally hypothetical, and
I know it's kind of armchair quarterback.
It's tough. It's tough to say. I mean, maybe he wouldn't have done anything. Maybe he knows that she would have blinked out of existence, and he didn't want Rory to have to see that. I don't know. It's really tough.
Maybe the Doctor was lying about letting her back into the TARDIS would cause all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
Maybe like you said, maybe it was just so that he didn't want Rory to have to see that happen.
Mm-hmm. And explain to me how they were able to interact at the facility. What's the difference between being in the TARDIS and because the TARDIS would get angry? I mean, that's kind of what he said, but I don't know. I have a tough time believing that personally.
Especially after watching all the Doctor Who that we have, because it's like, well, we've seen worse in the TARDIS. So it's just like, well, if the TARDIS can handle having two brigadiers in the console room in Modern Undead, back in the Peter Davison era, I'm pretty sure the TARDIS can handle having two Amy's in the console room. So.
Maybe he just didn't want all the domestic drama.
Exactly. But it's kind of a little like 6 and 1 half and does the other, I guess. All right. All right. Topic number 3. Interface and the handbots. So I kind of want to just touch on this a little bit. I know there's not a whole lot to talk about here, but what did you think of the whole setting on Apalapagia?
I loved it, and I'll tell you why I loved it.
Okay.
It reminded me so much of the game Portal.
Yes.
You've played that game?
I haven't played it, but I'm familiar with it.
I mean, it looks just like it. And then not only that, but underneath, where the engine room is, that
Yes.
the same thing happens in Portal, where you're in this facility and you have this creepy robot talking to you, much like in this.
Interface,
Yeah,
like interface.
right. And
Yeah.
then she escapes out of the main facility into this dingy, steamy kind of almost like a basement. And
Yeah.
the same thing happens in the game.
So you saw a lot of comparisons.
Oh
to
yeah,
the
there were
games.
so many, and even there's a song that goes with Portal that I think starts with the phrase like "This is a triumph," and then they keep saying "This is a kindness," and it just to me they were so. I'd never heard anybody compare the two, but I don't know. To me, they were so similar.
Now, Portal, if I recall correctly, came after this episode, right?
No, Portal 2.
Or is it? Do I have it backwards?
No, Portal 1 was I think 2004.
Okay, well then, yeah, obviously. So maybe this episode was kind of inspired by Portal then.
And, no, maybe it seemed to be inspired by a lot of different things.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
But it just as a Portal fan, you're just kind of like, that's a little too, it's amazing how close it is.
Oh yeah.
Kind of taken aback by it. That's great. All right. Yeah, interface I find kind of interesting is that it's not like normally when we have AIs on Doctor Who, they're out to kill the Doctor and his companions. They usually have some ulterior motive or whatever. It's usually never good. This interface, is essentially, this is kind of like a care facility.
Yeah.
And so interface doesn't have any malevolent intent. There's no like behind the scenes villain, pulling the strings. And it's just interface and Amy surviving for 36 years together. And Amy obviously spends most of her existence fending off the handbots because, as we're told, the handbots, if they inject you with their medicine, it's going to be fatal to you. And Amy has to kind of make the conscious choice for the next 36 years. Hey, do I want to keep fighting them off and stay alive, not knowing if I'll ever get rescued, or do I want to give up? And she just keeps on fighting.
Yeah.
And after 36 years of that, it has day after day after day, year after year, that has to wear on you.
Oh yeah. And you could see it. I mean, she does kind of lose it a little bit. But
Yeah. Now, one thing I did find interesting with the handbots, when push comes to shove, and all of a sudden they get a little menacing, their face kind of opens.
Oh yeah,
up.
that was super creepy.
And they're like surrounded by all these needles, and it looks so hostile. And I'm thinking, what designer designed this to make like, okay, you're supposed to try and reassure people these are medical, and you're like, okay, you're making this like you're turning these medical robots into this dangerous threat,
like a Resident Evil villain.
And it's this horrible, no, that looks good. I'm sure people will find that very calming.
Yeah, kill them with a heart attack before they die of anything else.
Exactly, because I know if I saw that thing coming, I'd be like, no, what the hell? And it's just I can't imagine how that would work in real life. But okay, it's Doctor Who again. Hand wave it.
Those handbots reminded me of something, and I can't really place what it is. One thing that I thought of maybe was Android from Bad Wolf. Do you remember the Android?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. They remind me of something.
And they're also kind of reminds me of the Peter Capaldi episode
Smile. Yes, I thought of that too, but I didn't want to go back and watch it again just to remind myself.
But I mean, obviously the Smile robots had these emojis.
Yeah.
But here, just it did kind of give a little similar vibe, I think, to Smile. But obviously this came first. So very interesting. But yeah, I found this whole facility kind of interesting. Amy chooses this garden only after a few options when she first arrives, and I'm thinking I would have gone through all the options before, just to see what the choices were before selecting. But I get they had to hurry because of time to keep the story moving. But for me personally, I would have
Oh yeah.
Scrolled through the entire channel dial, and just to kind of see what was available before selecting my option.
That garden, it looked very Dr. Seuss. Did you get that
Yes.
vibe from?
Yeah, it did. It did. And also, like, because I mean, it's a very, like, English style garden, like you find it at
Or outside
Manors
of Versailles?
in the UK. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Very elaborate estates. Where they obviously have sculpted, hedges and whatnot. And but here, obviously, it's kind of taken to more almost kind of like it has a little Tim Burton look to
Sure.
it.
And it,
Something out of Edward
right, or
Scissorhands.
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, exactly. Or Alice in Wonderland.
It also reminded me of that Heaven with Missy.
Yes,
Remember that?
yes.
It,
Yeah, that whole
it
courtyard
could have
in
been
the
the
garden.
same place.
Now, obviously, it pretty. I mean, obviously, the kind of central fountain
Right.
was different because it was supposed to with Missy's in heaven. It was a version of the TARDIS console room.
That's kind of what I
Her
thought
TARDIS.
when I saw it too.
But here, yeah, it looks very similar. I totally got that vibe on my rewatch. But you're very interesting stuff. All right. Anything else about this episode before we move on?
I don't think so. I think we covered most of it.
Yep, it's a fantastic episode, and again, if you're a time travel junkie, has to be right up your alley.
You know, I do want to say one more thing. We talked.
Yeah.
I know we talk a lot. Not we, but we talked a lot in the last time we met to talk about
Yeah,
Inferno.
in Inferno,
We
yeah.
talked a lot about wanting to expand on some of this, and what I would love to expand on here is Appalachia. I want to know
Okay.
more about this race. I want to know more about them than them just being scavengers, but they
Right.
seem to be humanoid, and their technology is amazing. I mean, they seem to have maybe not Time Lord technology, but they're
Right.
very, they're knowledgeable in the manipulation of time. They can create
It's,
these whole, like worlds in a room almost, it seems, and you just pick one and you jump in this elevator and suddenly you're
right.
in this whole world, I guess.
Yeah, and you have to wonder what else they can do.
Yeah,
It's kind of like when we talked about Inferno, we talked about the sequel potential
sure. Oh,
or prequel potential.
sure.
And there's kind of that here because we're told that this it's a kindness facility, what they call it, and it's for victims of this plague called Chen 7, which we're told is apparently it's dangerous only to people with two hearts. So obviously the doctor's vulnerable to it, but Amy and Rory aren't. And I want to know what caused this plague of Chen 7,
Right.
and why they set up these facilities. And it just seems like this would be ripe for some kind of sequel or prequel.
I think a prequel would be fantastic, and I wouldn't want it in audio form because it's so
Yeah.
visually striking. You'd want to see everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And maybe the 11th Doctor can can take a trip to pre-plague Appalachia.
Yeah. It's just, you're right. It does seem like there's definitely more room to explore here in this world. And I'd like to learn more. I mean, it seems like just a very interesting. I'd like to meet the people behind it.
Right. And how they
And
came
we
across that technology.
Exactly, and just in what their motivations were and all this. So, I think there's some potential there for a story. So, I agree. All right. If there's nothing else, let's move on to our favorite quotes of the episode. So, did you write down any favorite quotes that you
I
liked?
did. I didn't have a lot from this one.
Okay, why don't you go first then?
But I think there were some quotes that were really long that I didn't bother to write down. Just some
Okay.
of the conversations that they had.
Yeah.
But just as far as like little quips, I
Yeah,
really
go
liked
ahead.
when the doctor said, "I'm sorry, Rory, you're alone now, or you're on your own." And he said, "I'm not alone. I've got my wives." And he sticks his thumbs up. That was great. And
Thumbs up, brah.
yeah, it was just so awkward and funny. And I like the mention of the number one planet in the galaxy is a planet of the coffee shops. I thought that was great.
Right. And if I was Rory, I'd be like, "Look, you couldn't go to the planet of the coffee shops. You had to bring us here."
Yeah. That was all I had
like
for quotes.
Yeah. I had a few here. At the beginning, where Amy's looking for her phone, and she goes, "Have you seen my phone?" And the doctor's like, "Your phone?" And Amy goes, "Yeah." And the doctor replies, "Your mobile telephone. I bring you to a paradise planet 2 billion light years from Earth, and you want to update Twitter." And he says it with such disdain in his voice. Twitter. Yeah, I thought it was good. Rory had a good line with the handbot where the handbot asks, "Will you be visiting long?" And Rory replies, "Good question, bit sinister. What's the answer to not get us killed?" So I thought that was a good line. Rory and future Amy, where Rory says, "You've been crying a little bit." And future Amy goes, "Shut up, Rory." And Rory goes, "You have, haven't you?" And future Amy goes, "Woman with a sword, don't push it." That was a good one.
And the doctor has this wry grin on his face when she says that.
Yeah. I liked future Amy, where she, of course, says, "I'm going to pull time apart for you," which is just a phenomenal line.
Yeah.
Just so epic. I'll shred time and space because to get back to you. And so, yeah, it's just very epic. The Doctor and Rory, where they're kind of talking about knowing your own future. And the Doctor goes, "Yes, sometimes knowing your own future is what enables you to change it, especially if you're bloody-minded, contradictory, and completely unpredictable." And Rory goes, "So, basically, if you're Amy, then." And the Doctor replies, "Yes, if anyone could defeat predestiny, it's your wife."
It's your wife. Like the way he says that.
Yes.
Such disdain.
Yeah, it was good. And then lastly, I have the one line from the Doctor. He goes, "Come on, Rory, it's hardly rocket science. It's quantum physics." Which is a good line. So, all right. Do you have a rating for this episode?
I do. I have.
All right. What's your rating?
8.25 handbots out of 10.
8.25. That's very specific.
Yes.
8.25 handbots out of 10. I give this one. I actually really like this episode. It's one of my favorites from the Matt Smith era. I give it 9 giant magnifying glasses.
I was gonna.
I really like this one. I think it's just, I love the moral dilemmas and the performances, and just it's really a definitive Doctor Who episode. Like it's one of those, like, if you want to show somebody and kind of try to get them into Doctor Who, this is a good one.
Absolutely.
For that, I think.
And I would have given it a 9. 9 was my original number, but as I watched it 3 times in a row.
Oh, okay. So you got a little sick. You got a little sick of it, and I dropped some points.
I didn't get sick of it per se, but I started to pick things apart, and say, well, that doesn't make sense, or that fight scene is cheesy, So I had to knock off a couple points or percentage.
That's fair.
So
that's fair. That's fair. All right. So now we're going to reverse the polarity. Reverse the polarity, the neutron flow. So I want to go back to a classic era, and I'm going to go back to a rather obscure classic era story for this one, as I try to come up with something like, if you liked The Girl Who Waited, and you want to go back to the classic era, looking for something a little similar, I'm going to recommend The Massacre. And this is the Force serial season 3, way back in 1966. Written by John Lucarotti and Donald Tosh. Now, this one only exists currently in audio. It's one of those that's been lost in time, sadly. But thankfully, the audio, because of great Doctor Who fans back in the day who got out their big, ginormous tape recorders and put it right up to their TV and recorded the audio. Kudos to you, so we can at least hear this one, and maybe, hopefully, someday it'll get animated. This is a First Doctor and Stephen Taylor episode. So William Hartnell and Steve. So this one, let's see here. They arrive in 1572 Paris, France, where tensions between Protestants and Catholics are at a fever pitch in the city. Despite the danger, the Doctor heads off alone to visit the apothecary, Charles Preslin, no relation. Meanwhile, Stephen enters a tavern and meets Nicholas Muss, a Huguenot. And when the doctor doesn't return as planned, Stephen agrees to spend the night at Nicholas's home, and on the way they find a frightened serving girl, Anne Chaplet. And Anne is terrified because she overheard some Catholic guards speaking about a planned religious massacre of Huguenots in Paris. After fending off a threat from the abbot of Amboise, who knows that Anne discovered the threat to the Protestants, Anne and Stephen meet back at Preslin's shop. After the abbot is killed, the doctor soon reunites with Stephen. Now here's where it kind of gets a little bit similar to The Girl Who Waited. Because after Anne tells the doctor what day it is, he becomes very insistent that he and Stephen must depart the city as soon as possible. He sends Anne to her aunt's house, warning her that she must stay there. And meanwhile, Stephen and the doctor head across the city. They make it back to the TARDIS just as the curfew is falling and depart. Safely inside the TARDIS, the doctor informs Stephen of the massacre and the 10,000 Huguenots will die in Paris. Stephen is enraged by the doctor's disregard for human life and blames the doctor for Anne's probable death in the massacre. The doctor insists that he can't change history without great consequences, and Stephen can't accept that the doctor left Anne behind to die and is so disgusted with the doctor that he decides to stop traveling with him. So very similar to Rory's reaction to the idea of leaving old Amy behind. And that's the big connection here. So when the TARDIS lands in 1966 in Wimbledon Common, Stephen offers a terse goodbye and goes outside. There's a young girl, though, who enters the TARDIS at that point to report a nearby road accident, mistaking the TARDIS for a real police box. She's followed in by Stephen, who warns that there are two policemen approaching, and then the doctor hastily dematerializes the TARDIS with a young woman and Stephen aboard. Stephen is initially outraged at the doctor hijacking the young woman, but she says she doesn't mind and isn't fazed when Stephen reveals, hey, you're in a time machine. That's kind of cool, right? She introduces herself as Dorothea Dodo Chaplet, amazing Stephen, who knows that Anne's surname was Chaplet, meaning that she's her descendant. So after learning that Dodo's great-grandfather was French, he realizes that, hey, Anne survived the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. And so that's my connection. I was tempted to go with Modern Undead from the Peter Davison era because we had two Brigadiers in that one. Kind of like two Amy's, but I thought I'd go a little more obscure with this one.
Yeah.
We don't get to talk about the massacre at all, hardly, so I thought that this would be a good opportunity to talk about it.
That's a hole in my my viewing catalog. I haven't seen some of those lost First Doctor episodes, and that's one of them. I should go check it out.
Yeah, definitely check out the audio. It's on. It's available. You probably go to like Amazon or some other website where you can track down the audio. And yeah, it's kind of like a hole in my collection as well. I need to plug that one. But it's kind of interesting, and there is a bit of a moral dilemma in that one as well that I found surprisingly appropriate, considering The Girl Who Waited.
I thought you might go with Ark in Space just due to the aesthetics, but I really couldn't think of one. I'm surprised that you pulled that out. Good job.
So thank you. So I know I kind of reached a little bit for it, but there are. I like the moral dilemma similarity, especially Stephen as kind of like a precursor to Rory down the road. We do have some feedback that I want to bring up. Holly from Wisconsin wrote in, and so let me pull up her email. And where is it here? Oh, I pulled up the wrong one. There we go. Okay, so Holly obviously has been writing a lot, and she wrote in about The Girl Who Waited. So she goes, "Hey Charles and Lee."
Hey,
so
Holly.
Holly giving Lee a shout out here. An emotional episode for the Doctor, Amy, and Rory. It was rough for the Doctor and Rory to see what Amy went through trapped on that planet, and also hard on the Doctor to see the pain that Amy and Rory were going through because of it. Them not even knowing what's coming when they get involved with the Weeping Angels a few years from now. The Doctor really should have some sort of companion rule book, and one of those rules should be don't touch any buttons until the Doctor has a chance to check them out with the Sonic.
Amen.
That's got to be rule 2, right? Don't think the Doctor will write that rule book, though, and when the companions when have the companions follow the Doctor's rules all the time, right? Some great battle sequences, though. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. So thank you, Holly. Great to hear from you. And she's obviously been following along with our special guest companions, and so it was great to that she gave you some love in that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Holly.
Yeah, it was great. So if you want to be like Holly, you can write to us here at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for Southgate Media Group @gmail.com, or you can reach us on the Twitter @nextstopsmg on Twitter, or on Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. We'd love to hear from you, and please like and follow us there, because that helps us build up our reach, our audience. And then, hey, if you're feeling up for it, check us out on the Instagram, Next Stop Everywhere podcast on Instagram. Definitely appreciate that. Lee, where can they reach you, and or at least try to get a hold of you so that maybe you can get yourself a new guitarist for your band?
Well, I don't have any real interesting personal social media stuff, but as far as the band goes, if you're in the Pittsburgh area and you want to play guitar for a sort of metal alternative kind of band, just send us an email at silencefollowsband@gmail.com. If you want to come check us out, we're going to be at the Millvale Music Fest this coming Saturday, the 11th. We're on at 5 at the VFW, the Victory Beer stage. So,
nice.
Yeah, so other than that, I don't have a whole lot.
And you can partake of the adult beverages.
You sure can.
Nice. Dan, do you have any videos, like YouTube or something, of your performances?
Yeah, I think if you just search for Silence Follows on YouTube, you'll see there's a live. Our last show was recorded. Our second to last show was recorded live and put up there by a local radio station. There's just random clips from different shows up there, and again, you can find us on all of the different streaming media platforms.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Very good. All right. As for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter or at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. Would love to hear from you. Or my blog of geeky things. Please work.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news, news of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media Group, including Titan Talk, the Titans podcast I do with Jesse Jackson, where we talk about all things Titans, and we're currently reviewing the Doom Patrol series on DC Universe, which has been fantastic. Or Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things David Lynch, Twin Peaks, etc., etc. And Zan was kind enough to help us out on Next Stop Everywhere 139 when we talked the greatest show in the galaxy. So if you liked us there, you might want to check us out on Ghostwood. We have a lot of fun. And we've known each other a long time, and of course, longtime friends. Our discussions can diverge in rather interesting ways sometimes. So please check that out. Otherwise, you can check out on my blog. Recently posted my big spoiler-filled review of Avengers Endgame. If you want to check that out and see what I thought about that. Spoilers, I really liked it and enjoyed it quite a bit. So please check that out. Now, everybody, I know we've been having some fill-ins, special guest companions like Lee. So if you're interested in doing what Lee just did, rather brilliantly, I might add. Lee's shaking his head. Yes. No. Yes, you did. You did a great job. You did a fantastic job. Please drop us a line at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com or on the Twitter or on Facebook, and let us know if you're interested, because always looking for more people to fill in, people that haven't done it yet. Lee's a veteran now. He's done it twice, and so he's kind of like he's the old grizzled vet
how about
now.
that?
Yeah. So So if you want to be like Lee, please do, and drop us a line. I'd love to hear from you, and let me know what some episodes that you're interested in. So just put that out there. And thanks to Lee and all my other special guest companions that have helped me out as we try to wait for Jesse to get back on track and get him back on a regular basis. He's dealing with some stuff with his wife Linda right now, so he's only to do part-time. But he's helping us out on the production end, which is great because that gets our episodes out. So give a little special shout out to him. And next time, though, and Next Stop Everywhere, John Takis is going to return as well. And he recently joined me for The Seeds of Doom. But this time we're going to talk another Tom Baker's classic, The Brain of Morbius.
Good one.
Which is a very interesting one, and if you're an old school like Frankenstein fan, this is essentially like Doctor Who meets Frankenstein a little bit, complete with mad scientist in the form of Morbius, and who's kind of experimenting on himself a little bit, creates himself a little body, and it's got a fishbowl for a head, but it's going to be an interesting one to talk about for sure, I'm sure. But so John Takis is going to join me for that, and can't wait to talk about that. John loves to do his homework, so there's going to be probably lots of obscure trivia on that one, if you're a trivia geek. All right. So Lee, any closing thoughts before we head off and sign off?
No, man. Thank you so much again for having me on. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, I had a ball, and again, you did a great job. I really enjoyed talking to you, and you had some great insights with this one.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.
And you bring a lot to the table, so I definitely appreciate it. Did you feel a little more comfortable this time? I know the first time you're a little, a little bit of a stage fright, but now you've done it once. You feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Good. That's good. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I did last time, and I did this time. It was fantastic.
Great. So you're obviously welcome back. Anytime you want to talk more Doctor Who, just let me know. And everybody, come on back next time for talk episode 142. We're going to talk The Brain of Morbius. Dun, dun, dun. It's going to be good. And we'll see you next time right here, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Bye, everybody.
Bye.